that suffering is part of some great plan that's been devised. I wonder, what will it take for you to start opening your eyes? I wonder.
Hello and welcome to the Atheist Experience. Today is Sunday, July 8th, 2018, and I'm your host, Tracie Harris. With me today is co-host Jen Peeples.
Hey, how are you?
Hey, Jen. The Atheist Experience is a production of the Atheist Community of Austin, a Texas nonprofit educational organization dedicated to promoting separation of church and state and positive atheist culture. And today you can join us after the show at the ACA studio at the Free Thought Library, where it's pizza party time. We're going to have variety pizza pies, and they're going to be served up to all our guests at the after show party, and that's on Koenig, which I'm pretty sure at some point they'll be putting up a address on.
Yeah, there it is.
There we go. So there's the after show address if you want to come out and join us for some food and fun. And everyone is welcome, open to the public. And so then let's see, today, I do have an announcement. The library is going to be open 6 days a week now. So we're extending the library hours, which is a great thing. It's so it was open, for certain hours during a few days a week, and now we're able to have the library open 6 days a week. Those hours listed are Tuesday through Sunday, 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Come on by and check it out if you're interested. It's a nice little zen place to hang out and look at some literature and just kind of relax.
Yeah. So I guess, have we declared Monday to be our Sabbath?
There's
no work on Monday.
Woo, I think, am I laughing too loud? That was an ear blowout. But that was the only announcement that I had. It's a great announcement. And how are you doing today?
Hey, not too bad. I noticed when I walked in that you're like wearing a suit. Jacket. Today. And I'm dressed like it's 90-something degrees here in Texas.
Which it is.
In July. So,
yeah.
So
but in the studio.
Sorry for
we're
the
not
mismatch.
Literally outside. I mean, we know we've got this downtown facade, but we're actually in the studio where it's quite a bit chillier. Yeah. So you had not quite a topic, but something you did want to mention?
Yeah, so several shows ago, Matt and I were hosting, and someone brought up Alcoholics Anonymous, and we kind of, once again, went into the fact that Alcoholics Anonymous actually doesn't have such a great track record. And we talked about, you're actually better off, doing it by yourself than participating in Alcoholics Anonymous. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Well, we got an email from a guy who said, oh, you gave really bad advice, and it's actually dangerous to tell people to quit by themselves. And he quoted something, and I may have said this, and I have to go back and listen to it, but he said that I told people that they're better off quitting cold turkey versus Alcoholics Anonymous. If I said cold turkey, that's not exactly what I meant. I meant, quit by yourself versus joining Alcoholics Anonymous. And he went in to talk about how just stopping drinking by yourself, basically detoxing on your own, is very dangerous, and that's true. But here's the thing. Alcoholics Anonymous does not offer detox. Basically, they tell you, quit drinking. And if you have a reaction to stopping drinking, then you're going to need medical help. So my recommendation is if you need to detox from something, whether that's alcohol or drugs or whatever, you should do that in a medically supervised situation and not take the word of a bunch of people who managed to negotiate that hurdle on their own for whatever reason. Or maybe they didn't. Maybe they did get medical detox, but now they're sitting in a circle telling you that you're fully responsible for all the harms you did while you were drinking, but you're not responsible for your recovery because, the group is going to, and your higher power are going to do that for you. And that's basically the message of AA. So that I have a problem with. But anyway, I just wanted to clarify that. When we were talking about Alcoholics Anonymous, we were specifically talking about a program that purports to treat alcoholism, not detox.
Okay.
Detox should not be done by yourself.
Cold turkey.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I actually like part of that about the show is that, every now and then, I don't always do it, but I do engage, I think, a little bit at the blog now and then, like especially in the few days after a program. And one of the things I always like is when there's a dispute and then people start posting evidence and research to it. And I just want to let people know that, sometimes I will say a thing on the show that gets challenged later, and I'll look up the evidence and be convinced that, okay, so this is not quite what I thought. I mean, it's not like that never happens. And I think part of the downside of the show is that sometimes you don't get to see that because it's a topic that's brought up on a call and then it's never brought up again. And so you're thinking like, oh, this host thinks something wrong. And maybe I did think something wrong. And then later at the blog, I see people posting information about it. And it's like, oh, the position on this particular issue has shifted. There's more data now and there's more evidence now. And maybe it was, more questionable earlier when I looked into it and it's not anymore. So I do, I appreciate when people post the links to the research, and I do try to look at that and sometimes reconsider my views. And so this does occur. It's just not always as public as the error sometimes,
Yeah.
So that's an interesting thing. Yeah. Speaking of the blog.
Yeah.
So I went on to do the open show thread and post that so that people could post comments at the blog for this show today. And I let loose a few comments. So I saw that there were 4 comments pending. I went ahead and admin them, which usually I have to look at them first, just making sure it's not someone trolling. And one of them I wanted to go ahead and respond to. I did release it at the blog. They were just basically someone writing in and saying, a lot of times I cringe when I hear the host reply. I'm not always super happy with how the host reply. It's not what I would say. And that's fine. I expect that there's probably a lot of people that disagree with a lot of what we say on the show. And, even other atheists I don't expect are going to always agree with us. And like I said just a minute ago, what we say isn't always correct. And sometimes we need to be corrected. So with that in mind, one of the things they did say is that the hosts seem to have forgot the basic tenets and principles of atheism and replaced them with philosophy. And I just wanted to point out that there are no basic tenets and principles of atheism. And that's part of what the point of this show is about. Okay, so it's called the Atheist Experience, and there's a few reasons for that. So years ago, atheism was very much less public as it is today. And a lot of people had misconceptions, and so the atheist community of Austin decided to put out a public program to give people an opportunity to have conversations with atheists, to call up and talk to an atheist and ask questions and engage with an atheist and see who are atheists. And of course, there's not a homogenous atheist that represents like every atheist. So they were getting to talk to different atheists with different perspectives, and that was part of the experience. And additionally, what we had was that these atheists that were on the show would talk about their views on different things that were happening, or give maybe different opinions to a caller on a different issue, on a particular issue. And so what you had there was just sort of atheists describing their experience of being in society and how they react to social issues in different situations with family and things like that. So it was kind of a multi-layered thing about what is this experience. Is it an experience with an atheist? Is it an experience of an atheist? But the point is, each host brings to the table their own face of atheism. And the only thing that we have in common on this particular show is that it is produced by the atheist community of Austin, and that we answer to that group for whatever we say or do on the program. So for example, I don't think this has ever occurred, but if we had a host that said something that was like particularly egregious, that went against the grain of, it was like so heinous that the association said we can't have that on our show, that, like someone starts spouting racism or sexism or, whatever, and the group decided that host has to go, then that would be the host, being asked to step down most likely. And that would be the extent to which we represent the atheist community. We are here to represent separation of church and state, positive atheist culture, because that is what the group wants us to do and has asked us to do, and that's why we're sitting here. But at the same time, we have our own personal views and opinions, and we are giving those, and so each of us gives a face of an atheist. And if those perspectives are not your perspectives, and if you want your perspectives to be presented more publicly, then I suggest that you produce a more public forum for your atheist perspectives. Give your own face of atheism. Don't just be frustrated that we're not representing you. And I can promise you the reason for that is that we're not you.
Yeah.
And if you want to represent yourself, I completely encourage that. I think the more voices, the better.
Yeah.
You know, I like the fact that there could be a whole range of public atheist voices, and ones where I think, oh no, you know, this person shouldn't be talking about this. They don't know anything about it, which I'm sure people think about me sometimes. And then you have the other aspect where somebody might be talking about a field where they're very, you know, a consummate expert, and you're going, oh, this person is, you know, really great at what they're doing and saying, and that's fine. But it is, I can't be your face, right? And unless you're a member of the atheist community of Austin, I'm not even volunteering here to represent you on any level, you know.
Well, yeah, and that reminds me, that we get contacted periodically by email and on the Facebook group, everything, by people who have formed some sort of like special interest group, and they've like attached the word atheist or secular to it, and they think that we should promote this group on our show. One of the groups that recently contacted us, I guess it's been a few months ago, they were an anti-choice group that wanted to promote the idea that there are lots of women out there who regret having abortions, and that this deserves a hearing, and that we should promote this on our productions. And, you know, and I was like, no, the group has a specific position regarding, you know, a woman's right to choose, and this is like the antithesis of that, so no, we're not going to be promoting your group. And of course, people with these special interest groups tend to get really irate when you refuse to promote them, saying, but we're atheists. But yeah, so we agree on this one thing. That's it, you know. But yeah, I mean, just because you're an atheist or secular group doesn't mean we have any obligation to represent you on this show, because we are actually a reflection of our community.
Yeah, which is here in Austin, and people can join from outside of Austin.
Yeah.
I should mention that if people do want to join and become members.
Yeah.
I mean, the Atheist Community of Austin is the label. The members of that group are who produce this show, and this is who we answer to.
Yep.
And as long as we're not embarrassing them,
Right.
then we're going to be in these chairs for as long as we need to be.
And the thing is, I mean, if you want to be part of a community, and I've given this advice out over the years to a lot of people, because people are saying, hey, we don't have anything like this in my town or whatever. You know, the ACA was started when some people ran an ad in a paper, and they started meeting at a bagel shop, you know, and it was just a core group of like-minded people, and the organization grew from that. And now we have so many more opportunities to do that. You've got meetup groups, you've got, you know, Facebook, you've got all kinds of ways of connecting with other people in your community. If you want to start an atheist community where you live, where you have face-to-face contact with other people, do that, you know? And I mean, you can run an ad in the paper, you can tweet it out, you can start a meetup group. Craigslist, whatever you want to do. I promise you, you're not the only atheist in your community. There are other people just like you somewhere out there.
And it has never been easier to publish your opinions to the world than it is in the age of internet.
Yeah, and so, I mean, I would encourage people that are out there feeling alone and isolated, start an atheist community. Even if it's an online community, a virtual community, whatever, start a community. Connect with other atheists.
Yeah, but just remember, you are your own face, and it is your responsibility to represent your own views. It is not my responsibility to represent your views, and that's not why I'm sitting here. And I just want to make that clear, not as any kind of chastisement, but maybe as a way to make you feel better that you don't agree with me, because you don't have to agree with me. I'm not claiming to speak for you. So don't feel like somebody is misrepresenting your views because I'm sitting here saying something you don't agree with. Because I'm fully willing to admit it's not your views, and I don't represent you, and I was never hired to represent you, or, you know, voted in to represent you. Or,
didn't volunteer for that.
Yeah, I'm happy to say that, you know, this person's views are their own, and I do not speak for them, and they can speak for themselves. And with that, Let's go ahead and hit the ground running. We're going to start with John in Florida. Hi, John. You're on with Tracie and Jen.
How you guys doing?
Very well, thank you. How are you?
Can you hear me well? I'm on a crappy phone.
Well,
so
you
I just wanna
sound
make sure.
great. It sounds like $1 million handset.
But you know what? I won't listen to this replay because my voice sounds ridiculous over the phone. I don't know how you guys feel.
No, you
when
sound
you hear your
normal.
own voice, but I don't like it. I sound like a little nerd.
Okay, well,
Maybe I am.
I would say your voice
I
is
want-
well within the range of normal.
Okay. All right. As you say so.
Okay.
All right. So 2 questions. The first one is more of a funny off-topic question. When you guys have dinner after the show, why don't you ever invite religious people?
They are invited.
It's open to the public.
Oh, okay. I normally hear just the atheists, atheist friends, or I
No,
don't hear like
A lot of times
you know,
people will say
anybody.
atheist or atheist-friendly people. So yeah, I mean, we don't want people that are hostile to atheism coming to the dinner
Right,
for
right.
sure.
Yeah.
But
And you're not allowed to come here and proselytize.
we ask nobody that comes through the door for the dinner what their views are on God.
Okay. All right. Well, maybe I understood it then. All right. So the real question is I just want to see kind of where we get our morals and see if our morals conflict with our daily lives. According to Scripture, I'm a Christian, so I'll be talking about Christianity. I think there's quite a bit of things, and I know you don't believe it, but in the Bible where you probably think it's immoral. Let's say the killing of the Canaanites. Would you say if that actually did take place, or whether it's a story or not? Do you think that's immoral?
I
That's
think
not
genocide is wrong, yes.
right? Okay. So again, the question is, my question is to see if our morals conflict with our daily lives. So the Old Testament, there's slavery, there's Canaanite genocide. And so what I would like to ask is, do you think abortion is a moral right? Do you think abortion is a moral right?
I don't believe, I guess I don't know what a moral right is.
Yeah.
Do you think it's acceptable behavior?
I think if a woman wants an abortion, she should be able to have an abortion.
Okay. So when we're talking about the Old Testament, how do you justify saying God killing the Canaanites is an immoral act, but when we kill people here
Okay.
in our uterus, that's a moral right?
For me, this boils down to the idea of respect for individual autonomy. When you murder the Canaanite, right, you are violating that person, and that's why I view it as wrong, assuming that they're not trying to kill you, right? So when you murder a Canaanite child, for example, I would say that would be wrong because that child is not threatening you. That child is not a threat to your society or to you personally, and so you are just violating them. You are violating that person in a way that violates them, takes their life. And so because you have not respected their agency and their autonomy as a human being, that is where the violation comes in. When it comes to an abortion, I have to respect the woman's autonomy, right? She's the one being violated here. Her body is violated, and I have to respect her autonomy and her agency in the same way. So I'm looking at this as, when I view it, she's in the position of the Canaanite child, right? Because her body is being violated by another person, and she has then a right to not be violated in the same way the Canaanite has a right to not be violated, because I respect both of them as autonomous people who have the right to say, I don't want to be violated.
Do you think that, and again, I'm not trying to just take this all like an abortion
that's okay.
conversation. I'm just really trying to do this in a moral kind of sense. So you're saying the innocent children and women, and say the Canaanites, is the child in the uterus, do you consider that a child, an innocent child, or does that have intrinsic value?
Okay, well, hold on. First question, do I consider it a child? I feel like what Roe v. Wade came up with, and I think it's probably as close to an answer as we can get, is that there is a point at which there's like a time span at which nature, during a gestation, has what we call the fetus would be non-autonomous, right? In other words, it cannot survive without the mother's body. And then you have a time span while the fetus is still not yet born where it could survive independently, right? Where you've got this entity that if it were born early, for example, would survive, it would be viable. And so Roe v. Wade kind of drew a line and said the state can have an interest when you have something there that can be autonomous, can be independent. It's kind of a weird decision, but I do agree that there is a point where you have in the uterus an autonomous person and where there's a point prior to that where you do not. Are we in agreement on that?
Well, I think science, recently has come out to say that, it is a 100% genetically human being. It's a human being. It's a human being. We're talking about personhood. Correct. You don't gain any new genetic information.
That's not the question.
Now.
I'm talking about personhood, right? The concept of being an autonomous person.
What separates that fetus from, say, an infant? Water, food, air,
autonomy.
And time.
Autonomy. The infant. Wait a minute.
Yeah, water, food, air. Wait a minute. Air, and time.
Hold on. Okay. Here's what separates it. The baby that is born is not violating someone else's body. That's the difference.
But it's not. But a child, and when someone asks you how, if you were pregnant, I wouldn't ask you, and if I was talking about your baby, I wouldn't ask you how's your body. I would ask you how's your baby.
I don't understand.
So it's a separate person. It's a separate person.
Right. A baby is a separate
it's not, person. Yeah, it's a person in your body.
But the point, that's what I'm saying. It's a person in your body, right? So think of it in terms of like sex. Well, wait a minute, like in sexuality, right? If a woman consents to sex, then we call that sex. If a woman doesn't consent to sex, we consider it a violation and we call it rape, right? We can say it's wrong because she didn't consent to this. Her agency, her autonomy as a human being has not been respected, and that's what we're saying is wrong. If we respect her autonomy and she wants to have sex and she has sex, then it's not considered a violation and a rape. You're allowed to be inside her body. So when you have a pregnancy that she's consenting to, then this is her pregnancy. But when she has a pregnancy that she is not consenting to, then her body is being violated. And I agree with you, whether you call it a person, not a person, a child, not a child, it has no right to violate someone else's body without their consent.
Are you talking about abortion just with rape, or are you talking about...
No. I'm using rape as an example of how consent makes a difference in bodily violations. So if a woman's body...
So you would agree if I called you, if we were friends, and I told you that, we're thinking about abortion for whatever reason. 95% of abortions are based on inconveniences. If you disagree, feel free to let me know. But to
me, it doesn't matter. The reason for the abortion is irrelevant.
So if I called you as a friend and I said, hey, this is what we're thinking about. You were close to us, obviously, if I was talking about abortion with my wife with you. And I said, the baby, Jeanette, we found out the baby is going to have blue eyes, and we don't want that. So we're going to have the baby aborted.
Okay. All right.
That would be morally acceptable to you?
It's not my business. Why a person does it? What if a woman said, I don't want to have sex with this guy because he has blue eyes, and then he had sex with her anyway? Would that be okay?
Yeah, but it's not the child's fault that you have unprotected.
Well, it's not this guy's fault that he has blue eyes. Why can't he just have sex with her?
I just think whatever theories that you come up with will be weaker than my basic intuition that says killing
children. Your intuition doesn't apply to any other person. Your intuition is not a metric by which any other person has to live.
You would tell your friend what then?
About-
if they said, hey, I found out the baby's going to be gay, we don't want a gay baby.
My friend
we're gonna
owes
have
me
the
no
baby killed.
explanations
Yeah.
for why they want to have sex with somebody or why they want to have a baby or don't want to have a baby. They
So
don't.
you would just
they
hang
don't-
up the phone, or you would?
No, I'm
hang up
saying
the phone,
that
or would
that's
you-
up to them.
Yeah, I can't think
It's
of a
not-
single
this is none
friend
of
of
my
mine
business.
who would have that conversation with me because they know I don't care. If they want to have an abortion, I'm not going to ask them
So
why.
why do you care about innocent children dying in the Old Testament?
Because they are not violating
they're-
somebody. They're not
They're
dying
autonomous human beings.
in response to violating someone else.
So
So why do you
Why-
do you think that the genocide of the Canaanites was morally correct?
sure, why not? If we're gonna
No.
if
I'm
killing-
asking you. You seem to think that has some devastating consequence for abortion, but I'm asking you, was that a morally correct thing?
If he thinks abortion is wrong, then I would think that he would think it's okay to commit genocide.
Yeah.
Because you're
Well,
basically saying
well-
that you can violate people and you don't need their consent to do it, and that their humanity doesn't matter.
But I want
Right,
him
but
to
you
answer
think that way. You think that way too. But
No, I'm
not
asking
when it
you. I'm
comes
asking you
to-
what you think.
I'm saying if someone's not violating somebody else, then
Well,
there's no grounds to
in
be harming them.
Well, in Canaanites, it says God, God said to wipe everyone out, but then you have a sentence or two later that says don't remarry with them and stay away from them. So a lot of the language that was spoken back in the day, it's like annihilating. We annihilated that team, or
So
really.
I guess my
No,
question is,
we use that
if
same
you...
we use that same language today. So I don't really think he
Right.
annihilated them.
But if you think
so
it's
you're
all
saying-
right...
I don't think an NBA team annihilates their opponent.
If you think it's
I
okay
think
to murder autonomous children, why are you opposed to abortion?
because I don't think genocide was a complete wipeout of Satan.
But do you believe that children, that they were instructed to kill children?
Well, I could tell you if there is a God, you probably wouldn't bow down and worship him if you knew that story was completely true.
Do you believe in the story of Abraham and Isaac?
Sure, yeah. I believe in the entire Bible.
So then you believe that God would tell someone to kill their child. And you believe, why would you not believe it when the Bible says that God told them to go wipe out people and kill the children and kill the women? And, why would you
Well,
think...
because when you read a verse, when you take text out of, I'm going to mix this up, but yeah, when you take text out of context, you always get conned. You got to read the entire...
You're saying that I can't find a verse where God
and
instructed the
it says, boom,
Israelites to kill children?
Yeah,
You're saying that
exactly.
verse
you can
doesn't
read that
exist.
verse, but then you can also take your reading a step further and take it to fourth grade reading, and then read a couple more sentences, and you're going to see that it also talks, how can we annihilate the Canaanites? But then it says, don't remarry with them. So it was a...
Were they told to kill the children or not?
But do you care if they were told that?
I do, if you're going to say that you're in favor of the Bible and you think that that's a moral thing to do, and then you're going to say that you think abortion is wrong, but it's okay to murder children.
What my point is I hear you guys a lot talking about slavery, Canaanites.
Yeah.
And I've yet heard anyone ask you what's your stance on an innocent life in the uterus.
I think a person who's being violated.
I'm saying it sounds a little conflicting.
No, it's
for your moral
consistent.
standard.
I'm saying that if you're violating somebody else, then they have a right to defend their body.
I mean, and I got to tell you, I don't believe your claim that you've never heard anyone ask us what we think about abortion, because we've talked about this many times on this show.
Okay, well, I probably listened maybe 15 shows in the last year.
Yeah, and here's First Samuel 15:2-3. Thus says the Lord of hosts, I have noted what Amalek did to Israel in opposing them on the way when they came up out of Egypt. Now go and strike Amalek and devote to destruction all that they have. Do not spare them, but kill both man and woman, child and infant, ox and sheep, camel and donkey.
Mm.
There
now,
it is.
Are you reading that? Is that the Greek version, or is that like the NIV? Or?
Oh, so it only counts if it's the Greek version?
No, because I think you guys are intelligent enough that the 1611 King James Version is a little bit different in language than, say, the NIV.
All
Would
right.
you guys agree?
If we're gonna do Bible Gateway, let's look up all the different verses.
No.
Do we really need to do this? Because it's really pathetic. The Bible has people telling them that God has instructed them to go and kill children. We know that that's in the Bible, and you're dancing around and saying, no, it's not. It's not an interpretation. How clear could that be?
Let me ask you this.
I can be honest and say I agree with that. I don't have to hide.
Well,
to say I don't agree with that.
Let me ask you this. You say that your God did not command a genocide. Is that your claim?
No, he's saying a genocide wasn't committed. I mean, clearly a genocide was commanded. I mean, I just read where a genocide was commanded.
My point is, if there is a God, then if he takes an innocent life, whether you're 2 or 72, how is that immorally different than you taking an innocent child in your womb? And
because the person that God is having killed isn't violating somebody. I don't understand why you don't get this. If that person is not threatening somebody or violating their body in some way, then why is it justified to kill them?
So if God's the author of life, and he can't take an innocent life? just as much as an author of a mother can't take her innocent child?
I don't understand what you're saying.
That makes no sense.
No, a person cannot just go and kill a child, but you can defend yourself against a bodily violation that you are not consenting to.
I don't maybe I'm not understanding the bodily violation. What is that?
The fetus,
when somebody inserts
the mother's body
into your body and you didn't agree to that, so it's like a rape, right? When somebody has sex with you and you're not consenting.
I'm not talking about the 1% of rape abortion.
I'm not talking about a rape abortion either. Look, this is not hard. I'm saying that if you want to have a pregnancy and you're happy with it and you're consenting to it, after you find out about your pregnancy, you consent to it, then you have a happy pregnancy. If you have sex with somebody and you consented to that sex, you have a happy sexual experience, right? So then if you're in a situation where you don't agree to have sex with somebody and they violate your body, that's considered a rape and it's a bodily violation, and we say that that woman has been violated and it's wrong. And so what I'm saying is when you have a pregnancy where the woman she finds out she's pregnant and she says, I do not consent to have my body violated in this way. I do not consent to this. So now we've got a person in her body that she is not consented to have there, and they're violating her.
Correct. So let me ensure that you're answering my question and not jumping. We probably all think we're jumping around, but my question to you is, if it's not rape and she just wants to have an abortion of inconveniences, that is okay to you. Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly what we've been saying all along.
Yes, I'm only using rape as an analogy. I'm not saying that the woman who's having an abortion was raped or not raped. I'm saying that I'm talking about the importance of consent in judging whether or not a person is being wrongfully violated.
You guys are very smart with science, correct? I mean, you
I'm not.
Agree with science?
Jen has an engineering degree. I am not that good.
So why is it when science conflicts with what you think is correct, say a 100% genetic human being, the moment that's turned
that's not in conflict with what we're talking about.
No, I agree with you that it's a human being.
Yes.
Correct. So so you agree that science says that's an actually genetic human being?
Yes.
And it's okay to suck the brains out of it?
If it's violating somebody who does not consent to the violation, yes.
I see. So if someone has unprotected sex because they're idiots, then to you, they have a moral right to say, this is inconvenient for me, get it out.
Yes.
But if God, the author of life, says, this child needs to be dead today for whatever reason.
Right, because God's not being violated. God's not being violated, and the child that he's commanding be killed isn't violating anyone. This woman, you're basically saying that we should sanction her.
So my children are...
Go ahead.
So my 4 kids that I have, they're potentially violated my wife.
If she didn't want to have them, yes.
Yeah.
But it has value if the mom says yes, no value if the mom says no.
Correct.
Exactly.
Correct.
You got
Thank
it.
you.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. You guys, I don't know how you're cheering and happy, right? That makes sense to you?
Yes, just
Yes.
like, and that's why I was trying to use the sex example. It's happy if she says yes and consents to it, then it's a happy sexual experience. If she doesn't consent, we all understand that it's a traumatic rape. Consent is what makes the difference here in whether or not a bodily violation is something that is okay or not okay.
So she has a right to get rid of this.
She has a right
Yes.
to not have her body be violated without her consent.
Okay, now, rights exist in a materialistic universe?
Sure.
What is a right? Is it a preference or is it a right?
No.
Where
A
do you
right,
get
a
your
right are
objective-
a right technically is the things that your society allows you to do under like the laws. So if it's not against the law, then technically you can do it, right?
But
now,
if you were living in North Korea, you wouldn't have that same.
let's say that I lived in a country where abortion was completely banned, all right? Then it would be true that women do not have a right to an abortion in that country, but I would be fighting really hard to get women that right.
So Hitler was right with killing millions of Jews because he called the shots and it was his country.
No, I'm saying that
law.
that under the law, he had given himself this right, and that would be a situation where I would fight against that right.
You would say you would disagree with that.
I would say we should not have that right. Yeah.
So right is subjective.
Well, it's a legal term. I mean, it's like a right has to do with what you are allowed to do. Now, whether or not you should be allowed to do it or whether or not you shouldn't be allowed to do it is a whole other matter. What rights we're going to grant and not grant are debatable, and I know which ones I would go for, which would be the ones that would maximize autonomy in situations where you're not harming somebody, and I wouldn't let people be violated in situations where they don't consent to it and where they haven't done harm.
Okay.
I mean, I'm going to go ahead. We have other callers, and I think we've gone on, and I feel like you've had opportunity to make the points you want to make. Do you feel satisfied at least that you've been able to express your views?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thank you for not hanging up on me.
No, it's okay.
You know, I know abortion is a touchy subject, but, you know, I got my point across, you guys got your point across, and the audience and whatever can make their, you know.
Okay, I'm good with that too, and I want to thank you for your call, John. Okay.
Thank you. Have a great day, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and with that, now we're going to another John in Pennsylvania. Hi, John. You're on with Tracie and Jen.
Hi, Tracie and Jen. How are you?
Good.
All right.
So you're calling to shut us down. Is that right?
Well, that was John that just spoke. He was exactly right. I don't hate to say it. And there's a simple. I was listening to that, and I completely understand every single point you made. And when the last thing you were talking about there, rape, oh my goodness, yeah, and this is the thing about love. Love isn't something that you can control. It has to be taken and given freely. You can't force anyone to love you. They have to want to love you. They have to see qualities in you that make them feel safe and comfortable. And the thing about falling in love, love is something that it's really hard to put into words.
Okay, love is cool. What now?
Yeah, so I thought you were going to shut us down.
Oh yeah, I'm getting there. Yeah.
Okay.
So the whole thing about men and women getting married, being in love, having a relationship out of love, it's because when you have sex, you have children, and those children need to be raised in an environment where they see true, genuine love between a man and a woman. So
or a woman and a
they
woman.
can see that.
Yeah.
Or a woman, and you can't.
Love is love. We're good.
Yeah,
it's all good.
I have nothing. I mean, love is love. That's the thing. So I have nothing against that. No, I'm just. So, but yeah, that's where it's we can logically define things. We can use science to try to find answers to things. But like science wants to make everything black and white. Like you got tools and instruments for testing, so we know for sure. Like
Okay, I got to stop you there because that is objectively not true. And you know how I know that? Because in my engineering work, I have to.
I didn't get to what I was saying yet.
Well, but you said something that science tries to make things black and white, and I'm telling you that's objectively not true.
Oh, I'm sorry. What I meant was like science is important for understanding. Like I have nothing against science or anyone that studies it, but we need to use science to test things, right? To find the answers. You said before about if you find something, like you said something and you find out later that it's not true, you're going to adapt what you believe and what you think and feel according to the new information. So that's what we do with science. And
that's what we do with everything.
Amazing things with science.
Okay, so what's going on?
So what we do, to even have a position as an atheist, you have to first have Christianity and the belief in a God. So what you don't.
Well, it has to exist for there to be atheists, right? The idea, technically, you could have a world full of atheists where nobody knows that they're an atheist, but we wouldn't have the label atheist, so.
Right.
You're actually agnostics, but.
No.
Well, we're that too.
Some people are agnostic atheists.
You don't know. So if your beliefs are challenged and you're given new information, then you will accept that new information and you will change your beliefs.
I would hope would do that.
Right. That just means because you haven't decided.
No, it's not about not deciding a thing. No, a belief just means that you accept something as true. It doesn't mean that you're inflexible, that you can't change your mind. Have you never thought that something was true and been presented with evidence and then you thought, oh, that's not true? Something else is true now?
Well, I kept going for the truth. I kept looking for the truth because like feeling, like you just said it right there, feeling. The feelings are really important. And there are things that you're like the conversation that you guys like. I hear in your voice like you're.
You may want to call back when you have this more concisely mapped out. Right now I think we're just sort of rambling. I don't know where this is going.
Yeah.
So I'm going to let you go. We're going to go ahead and move on to another caller. And my advice would be get your thoughts in order, get yourself some bullet points, and then call back again and try one more time. We're going to go. Weirdly, we have another John. I had to do a double take because I was like, is this the same John? But this is a different John in Orlando. Hi, John. You're on with Jen and Tracie.
Hi, Jen and Tracie. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you sound fine.
Hi. I just wanted to talk about something. I was preparing while I was hearing the other callers, looking up some videos about atheists and general ideas about your morality. So I just want to understand, so atheism doesn't have a moral system?
Correct.
Is that right?
Yeah, you are correct.
Okay. So I think I've seen some videos with Matt where he talked about the foundation for his morality being well-being.
Yeah, he calls it secular morality, and it is secular, but it's not something that every atheist would agree on.
Okay, so if we're talking about secular morality, then how do you two, the two of you, if it's independent of your view on a God, how do you come to the conclusion that killing someone is moral or immoral?
It's a violation of their rights.
Well, it depends on what's happening, right?
Well,
there's a situational aspect to this. Now, and I'm not even sure that moral or immoral is the right word, as opposed to something like justified or not justified.
Yeah, I'm assuming he's talking about murder or something
right.
like that.
But if I, for example, let's say somebody breaks into my house and they mean to do me bodily harm and they're going to kill me, I may have a reaction to fight to the death with this person. And let's say that I somehow overcome them and kill them. I'm not convinced that what I just did was moral But I do think that my society would view it as justified, so that they would probably say that in that situation, if you resort to an immoral attitude of not really caring whether you harm this person or not caring about their agency, not giving a crap if you murder them or kill them in some way, let's say kill them because murder can confuse the issue, my society is probably going to say, we don't consider you a danger or a threat to the society based on the situation surrounding this killing. Whether or not it's moral, to me, is another question, because for me, morality is about respecting the other person's autonomy, which clearly I did not do. But I'm not going to say that it would be something that I would not kill a person in that situation, and I would not expect that my society wouldn't understand what just happened.
So briefly, because I thought I heard a contradiction at the first caller, you mentioned that you agreed with John, what's his name?
They were all John, yeah, so that's easy.
Okay, you agreed that a fetus or something is in a woman's womb is a human being.
It is, yes.
And a life. So,
yeah.
So if that's the case, then how is it not against the well-being of that fetus or that entity?
I'm not saying it isn't against their well-being. What I'm saying is that when you're in a situation where you're violating someone else and something bad happens to you while you're doing that, I expect society to understand the justification, right? So in a situation where a person's trying to do me physical harm or trying to violate, let's say he's not going to kill me, let's say he just wants to rape me, right? He just wants to physically violate me, and I put up a fight and I kill the person. And I would expect that my society would say, you did what you had to do to not be violated.
So the justification for...
But the person I killed was a human being, right? I mean, I killed a human being for sure. It wasn't in his well-being interest for me to kill him, but I did what I felt was necessary to avoid being physically violated without my consent. And most societies would say, we understand that.
Okay, that makes sense. So do you guys hold the view that secular morality is superior, as Matt would say?
I believe in most cases it is.
I'm going to tell you something weird, and I don't know if you're going to agree or not, but I think that in most cases people are relying on a secular morality.
Yeah, I think so.
I think that in general there's two types of, I'm not trying to be dismissive, but just give me a second here. I talk to a couple different types of Christians usually. One is the type of Christian who says, I really feel bad that I have to shun my family members, but the Bible tells me I have to, so even though I feel like it's more, like, that might say they think it's morally incorrect, but like they personally feel bad about it, but they do it because they think the Bible wants them to do it. But then there's another brand of Christian who basically says, I don't think that God would tell me to shun my children or whatever, so I'm gonna not shun them, and I'm gonna say that part of the Bible I maybe don't understand right. So you've got a type of Christian that just simply does whatever the Bible says, like a set of rules. And that person, in my view, is not even using morality because they're not exercising judgment. They're just saying, this is the rule, and so I'm following it, and I don't care if I feel like it's bad or wrong or something, it's the rule. And that, to me, is not a morality. That's like an ethical system where the goal is do what the Bible says, and the person is just complying with it. So that's like an ethic, but it's not really a morality. But then when you get into the people that are actually making judgments, they are exercising moral judgment, and to me, they're exercising their own moral judgment, and they're kind of using the Bible sort of as a support for what they actually think is right already. Right. That's what I've seen. I mean, and you may be offering something different, but this is what I've experienced in my conversations.
So I guess I'm confused. What is the metric then? Because you guys seem to talk about metrics a lot, and when you're evaluating...
What is the metric for what?
For secular morality.
Well, that depends. Okay, yeah, I don't want to sound like I'm passing the ball here, but if you've been watching videos with Matt, I'm going to encourage you to call in when Matt is here and let Matt explain his moral framework, because that is, I don't think that it's a bad framework, but I feel like I'm not able to speak for someone else's, morality and how they claim that they're coming to their morality. I have my own perspectives on how I come to it, and I'm kind of with you. There's times when I'm going to say that well-being has to take a back seat to what is required, but it doesn't mean that it's always justified to violate people. Like, I think that when the part of that requirement is that this person is already violating people, So I don't think that proactively going out and saying, for example, that we don't have, enough food, so we're just going to start slaughtering people in order to, we're going to slaughter people who aren't violating us to make the food last longer for those of us that can survive it, and we're just going to go out and mass murder. That to me would not be acceptable, right? So I would, in that case, but these are very specific, weird instances where someone's going to make judgments, and other people are going to say, screw that, I would kill the people and eat the food, and I think that's okay. And I can't speak for others. I can explain to you that for me, in a situation where like a bunch of people were starving, there wasn't enough food to go around, the honorable thing to do would be for us to agree to starve to death together as human beings, as opposed to turning into what I would consider non-human monsters and just starting to slaughter people that weren't threatening to us and that have the same right to exist as we do.
Okay, I guess that's fair. Can I ask one last question?
And Jen can disagree with me. Like, I feel like I'm doing all the talking here. I'm sorry, go ahead. I'm gonna let Jen answer this one.
I just want to understand the labels that are often used on your show. So you guys often frequently say that agnostic and theism, they're two separate words to identify different categories. One is knowledge and one is belief. Did I get that right?
That's correct. So yeah, atheism and theism are about belief. Gnosticism and agnosticism are about knowledge.
And knowledge is a subset of belief.
Okay. So I've also heard Neil deGrasse Tyson. Are you guys familiar with him? I think you guys talked about him before. He self-identifies as an agnostic.
Right.
So does he have the label wrong, or?
I don't police what labels people apply to themselves. So.
Yeah, and for example, Richard Dawkins uses like a belief spectrum. So he has this kind of.
Yeah, and I'll say flat out, I disagree with his belief spectrum.
Yeah, to me, the main thing is there's this idea of whether or not you accept a proposition as true. And that's generally what people mean when they say they believe a thing. If I believe my spouse is cheating, that means I accept it as true that my spouse is cheating. If I think that I know it, if I'm saying I know they're cheating, not just I believe that they are, but like I know that they are, if I'm going to go to that level, that's a higher degree of confidence. It's still a belief, right? I still could encounter something that it shows me, oh, that wasn't correct, or that photo was doctored, or it was an old picture, or it was before I was married and I didn't realize it, or something. There could be things that could even knock out what we think we know, right? I mean, this happens all the time with new information. But usually you have like things that you hold as true, and then there's things that you hold as true with a super high degree of confidence. And that's the category you say, I know this, right? It's like you feel highly confident, but it's still a belief.
So are you guys highly confident there is no God?
I would say
I'm
pretty
much there, yeah.
I would be the person that would have to defend that, and I would defend it and have defended it thusly. So, for example, I feel highly confident fairies don't exist, and I am not trying to be dismissive of anybody's God or belief in God, but I don't believe in the existence of God for all the same reasons. And so for me, the level of confidence that I have that fairies don't exist is very high, and I would think that it's very high for you as well. And I view that my view about the non-existence of God is right up there in that same category, and it's because I have no more reason or evidence that's been presented to me that has been convincing that this God exists as I have and Bigfoot might be a good example just because there are people out trying to prove that, right? So I haven't really seen anything that they've offered I still don't feel that there is a Bigfoot. Now, if somebody found out that there was a primate living in North American woods, I would be the first one to say that's very cool, right? Like I did not know that, and that's an interesting fact. But I just feel like it's in that same category. So it kind of depends on how you're looking at it. So if you look at it as Tracie is saying that she knows this because she's saying that she holds it to the same degree that she holds that fairies don't exist, then you would probably think of me as a Gnostic atheist. And that would be my apologetic for why I would say that I hold it to that degree. And that's the best I can offer for myself.
Well, honestly, Jen and Tracie, I mean, my whole life I've been brought up in religion, and my parents tell me that if you're not religious, then you're not moral, and they say like everyone is moral, and I'm at a point where I'm just not understanding how like everything they've been telling me like contradicts with what you guys are saying, like from
Well, good.
shows and everything.
Yeah.
I do want to say, I mean, even when I went to church, they used to say that, you know, if you weren't religious, you could still be moral because God wrote his morality on the hearts of everyone, right? And it was always interesting to me that even though everybody had this moral code written on their hearts, nobody would agree.
That's what my parents would say, but in Spanish.
Okay. But I mean, isn't it weird that people don't agree then on what is okay and what's not okay? Like, shouldn't we be agreeing if we all have the same moral code written on? I mean, even if we're doing wrong, shouldn't we at least say, I agree that it's wrong because I have the same moral code written on my heart and I know that I'm doing wrong, but I'm going to do it anyway? Instead, though, people argue about whether or not something is right or wrong. And how can that be if we all have the same moral code? I think it's a fair question. I mean, I think it's a fair question. I think it's good that you're asking questions. And I also think that it's fair, like they labeled you as a theist, and I think that's fine. If you have a belief in God and you're just kind of like, I want to understand this a little bit more, like I'm not sure I'm clear on everything, that's where I was at like years ago. So, you know, I feel ya.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for taking my call. I appreciate
Absolutely, yeah.
Right, sure.
Anytime.
Thanks.
Thank you.
it. Okay.
All right. I do want to take some of the people that have been waiting, because we have a few callers that have been waiting for a while, and we have one that has been calling and been on hold from Hungary. So we're going to try Chase in Hungary. Hi, Chase. You're on with Jen and Tracie.
Hello. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, you sound great.
Awesome. Wow. I really want to chime in on the whole abortion and the morality thing as well, but I have a lot to go through here, so maybe if I'm done and we have time left. So a few weeks ago, Caitlin Potts, the author of the book Status Quo, was on the show, and she presented the idea that basically the Bible or Christianity was invented with the express purpose of oppressing women. Before I get on to my stuff, just quickly, what are your thoughts on this? Do you think this is accurate?
I don't think the Bible was written expressly to oppress women.
Yeah, it had so many authors over so many centuries, and then edited and then revised and collected in anthologies, books thrown in, books thrown out. I'm not sure that there is a singular purpose for the book. I think it can do particular things, and I think it does harm to the cause of women's rights and freedoms. But when it's taken literally, let's say, okay. But I don't know that I would say that there was like some theme beyond making a state religion for Rome.
Right. Okay. So. I just wanted to ask, because that statement didn't strike me as true on a sort of gut level.
I think we might be in some mild agreement here.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it got me thinking, you know, if it wasn't the Bible or religion in general that created that sort of society that oppressed women, then how did it come about?
Oh.
And I gave it some thought, and I ended up in a very surprising place, and I wanted to run it by you, see if you can spot some error in the reasoning, because if you thought the abortion was touchy, well...
Here goes nothing.
Yeah.
All right.
And yeah, just to paint a nice big disclaimer on this, I'm not a fundamentalist. I'm actually quite progressive, I think. I'm not trying to apologize for the phenomenon of oppressing women. I'm just trying to have a sort of dispassionate look at what...
You're just trying to figure out where it came from.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'd like to start with two premises which I hope we can all agree are fact. The first is that back in ancient times, life was very short and dangerous compared to the present day. The second one is that when it, just as a consequence of how human biology works, when it comes to population growth, women are the bottleneck, by which I mean if you have 100 women and 100 men, you can make 100 babies.
You mean 100 women and one man?
Yeah, I think that's what he was saying. Is
that's
that
the thing.
Yeah, but he said 100 men, but I think his point was you don't need that many men in order to produce a lot of
exactly
children.
my point. So
yes.
if half the men die, whatever,
Yeah.
the remaining 50 men can still make.
But I do want to say, I just want to bring up one point. On your first point about life being short and hard, there are some people who say that life expectancies and lifespans in the ancient world were not that different than they are today. It's just that people died more in infancy. So you have this average age of death that seems small, like seems younger. But really, if you survived infancy and you survived childhood, you would probably go on to live a pretty decent lifespan.
So I didn't do a whole lot of research on this. I just went on Wikipedia, and what I found there, I didn't follow up the source, which is very
I mean, you're going to see a shorter lifespan listed on as an average, but a lot of that is brought down by infant death.
What I found there is life expectancy after the age, once you had reached the age of 15, was still like 40 or something like that, up to 30.
Okay, well, maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, I think that probably varied depending on
Where
what
you-
part of the
your
world you were
circumstance.
living in.
Maybe.
Yeah, and not only
And,
that,
you know, just if you think about things like the complete lack of health care, you know, you can cut your finger, it gets infected, you die. You work with dangerous animals that can gore you every day. So in that sort of context,
Well, sure.
I don't think it was impossible for someone to reach 80 or 90 years of age.
But I mean, I'm following your
very,
points.
very rare.
I'm following your points so far.
Yeah, okay. So those are the two basic starting points. The first is that life is short, and the second is that women are more valuable to the growth of a population, which means that there's an incentive there on a societal level to keep women safer and let all the men go out and do all the physically dangerous stuff because they're more expendable, right?
Okay. I'm following you. When I say okay, I'm not necessarily in agreement, but I'm following.
Okay. And you might ask yourself, what's so special about population growth, right? Why couldn't we have a society that allows women to risk their lives and safety, and we just take the hit to population growth? And that could work for a society in isolation, but if you have a different society in the next valley over who do focus on population growth, then it won't take long before they outnumber you and they can invade you and extinguish you. And it will be their sort of...
So I'm still following.
asymmetric-
I'm still following.
Right. So,
Okay.
which, again, is very unfortunate, I would agree. But the fact is that it looks like there's a sort of selection pressure on societies to focus on growing as fast as they can.
but that only works if they're in competition for resources.
Well,
Wait a minute. I mean, I'm still waiting to get to the point where women get oppressed. I mean, I'm still waiting to hit that point.
I have a ways to go.
Oh, can we fast track it?
I'm going as
Okay.
fast as-
Okay, I'm going to stop
okay.
interrupting.
So, no, Jen raised a valid point, but I'm going to keep going. We can come back to it later. So, the other point is, if life is short and children die, and yeah, Tracie, you mentioned this, that infant death was very common. So, but if you take what we just said, that population growth is really important, but you don't live very long to raise children, and you know, even if you successfully give birth, you have no idea if the child will grow up into adulthood, then it looks like the best bet is to just play the odds and start making children as soon as you can, and just keep making children, because, you know.
Okay, all right,
once
keep
you have-
going.
once you have
I'm
enough
following.
grown-up children, you can.
I'm following.
Yeah.
Okay, go on. Next point.
But so there's an incentive for people, basically teenagers who have just hit puberty, to go away and start making children.
Except that women die when they have children at early ages, like when they hit puberty. That's when most women die in childbirth, is when they start having infants too early. So if you want to preserve the women, you have to wait till they get older.
Right.
Okay, so maybe not right as they in puberty, but fairly soon. The point is, you don't have like 10 years to date around and stuff like that.
Although you could make a lot of babies in 10 years of dating around, right?
Yeah. Well, but we don't generally the idea is that we want people to get married and then start making babies.
And this is where women get oppressed, but I'm wondering why. Like you're saying...
Not just yet.
Okay.
So where I'm going with this is you have an incentive for young people, let's say not exactly 15 years old, but young people to start making, to get married and start making children.
Okay.
But we also know that young people are fairly bad at long-term strategic thinking, and who you get married to and who you have children with is kind of a long-term strategic decision.
But it doesn't have to be.
Well, but it ideally is.
Why?
So you get better decisions, you get better results if you apply long-term strategic thinking there.
Wait a minute. Now you're starting to lose me in a big way, because we have societies, for example, in the Amazon that have partible paternity. They don't understand that, for example, one guy can produce a child with a woman. They have the attitude that many men are involved in producing a child with a woman. So they have a community situation where they raise the children sort of communally, and by having multiple men sleep with this woman when she's conceiving and when she's pregnant, and by letting her have free range of sex, all of the men who have had sex with her around the time of the pregnancy are considered to be fathers, and then they all participate in the upbringing of the child, and they are more involved, so that the child has more people actively involved in protecting it and looking out for it, because they all feel like they have this paternal interest in the child. So to me, that would be a better model, because the whole society then would chip in, and you wouldn't have to have this sort of, well, what if this person picks a person who isn't really helpful and then the child is in danger? If you have the whole community doing it and the woman is having free sex, it seems like that would be a better way to keep women pregnant.
Huh. That's interesting. I didn't know that.
And protect the children, because let's say that the actual biological father is kind of like a dork, right? And he goes off and gets himself killed doing something, wacky, and then you still have 4 or 5 guys who are like, "Hey, we're still here. That's still our kid."
Well, okay. I guess all I can say to that is clearly that's not the society that has evolved in.
Right.
I guess the sort of biblical societies. They were very much big on having a designated father.
Right. What we do is we lock down the women. And if you want to know what the anthropologists would suggest, it's that when you have property, and heritable property at that, and you have an understanding of paternity, right, then it becomes very important that the woman that you're with doesn't have sex with other men, because you have to leave your property to those kids and you don't want to leave it to someone else's kids. So it comes down to you have heritable goods, and you know that you want to make sure that child is yours.
Right. Okay. So at the end of the day, there's still then I guess, plausible reason for this sort of, well, not exactly monogamous, but I guess what we consider traditional marriage to emerge.
Well,
because
yeah, I mean, societies that have property and that have an understanding of how children biologically are produced by a single person, especially a single man, and also where women are not considered to be contributors, right? So if you have a society where women actually are big contributors to the resources, they have a lot more sexual freedom and they have a lot more equality within those societies. So when women are barred from contributing, but that's kind of what happens when you have to lock them up, right? So if you want to be 100% sure that this baby is your baby, you have to lock her down. You have to get her married before she hits puberty. You have to get her with this guy so that he's the only one that can have sex with her, and you have to put humongous penalties on her sexuality if she should have sex with anyone else, because they have to ensure that that child is their own in order to leave their wealth to their own child. It's a really sick motive, but it's
So,
Yeah.
okay, because I guess what you say, treating women themselves as property isn't essential to what you just described. So there can still be a society that's the husbands are very protective of their wives, but they don't actually treat them like property and they don't buy them for money, right?
Well, yes. I mean, I'm very
That's
protective
kind of
of
my
my
point.
wife, but I don't treat her like property, and I didn't buy her for money.
Yeah. So that's kind of where I'm going with this, is that there's actually, the way I say it's something of a selection pressure for societies to organize themselves in such a way that has these very asymmetrical gender roles, where the women stay home and they stay safe and they're very well protected by the men who go out and do all the dangerous stuff.
Well, women hunt and gather though. There's like
Yeah,
hunter-gatherer
so-
society. There's hunter-gatherer societies where these women are out gathering, and there are jaguars and stuff out there. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not like it's safe to be wandering around, pulling up roots.
Well, and
Well,
then,
yeah, but it's safer than hunting mammoths.
I guess. I mean, I don't know. Go ahead.
okay, so like Tracie pointed out, hunter-gatherer societies, I mean, they were, from what we know, they were much more egalitarian because women had just as much access to the resources that the hunter-gatherer group needed.
And we still have them today.
Yes,
I mean, this
we
is
do.
not a
We
thing
still-
of the past.
Right.
This is, I mean, it
And
is in the
so-
past, but.
So, we really see stuff like, locking women down when we start to have, like Tracie pointed out, this concept of property rights. And that came about with the advent of agriculture. And so, and incidentally, that's when lifespans started plummeting because you had a reliance on, specific types of food. And if your crops didn't make that year, everybody starved, or lots of people did. So there were lots of impacts on people. But one of the interesting things, and I read a paper on this many years ago, and it said that you only find morally concerned gods in locations where there are constrained resources. And so, the ancient Near East was one of the most resource-constrained areas. I mean, it was literally feast or famine some years in terms of, whether their livestock and their crops would survive. And that's where, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam originated. So, this idea that, the resources are a critical thing is something I think has a lot of currency out there. Access to resources.
But also, I mean, it's super important to bear in mind that if I have a baby, I know who the mother is.
Right.
But the guys around me, they don't know who the dad is unless they lock me down. And so if it's important to know you're the dad for some reason, then you're going to want to restrain me and my sexuality, and that's what's going to happen. But if it's not important, to you whether or not the child I give birth to is yours or not, then what do you care about my sexual freedom? There's no reason to lock it down.
Okay, but so this all kind of makes sense then with what Jens just said, because if there's very limited resources, then I, as a father or as the head of a family, I want to really, really hang on to my resources. So I want to make sure that it's my children who receive it. So I guess at the end of the day, what I'm saying is that there's a line in the sand, right? Which is the treatment of women as property. And there's very plausible, completely secular reasons for a society to organize itself in such a way where it has asymmetrical gender roles and arranged marriages at a young age, but without crossing that line in the sand.
Yeah. If you're saying that there are plenty of secular justifications without going to the Bible for people to oppress other people, I think we're on board.
Yeah.
I would agree.
And actually, I did a lecture several years ago on marriage, and it was actually talking about marriage equality in particular, and it was in advance of the Obergefell decision. And one of the things about marriage is that the church kind of was a relative latecomer to the institution. Historically, marriage has been used as more of a way of cementing alliances or of ensuring that property got transferred appropriately between families, and it was a political vehicle.
Yeah.
And so, you know, that's one institution that basically it started as kind of a secular social kind of thing, and the church kind of glommed onto it because they saw some value in getting a toehold into the institution of marriage.
Yes, that's kind of my conclusion here, is that we have all these secular reasons for the society to organize itself in this way, and then the religion comes along and, acting as a sort of moral authority, it codifies the details of the society and cements them in ritual, and then goes on to potentially completely exaggerate them and corrupt them. But it's not a, like you said, it's not an orchestrated effort.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is this is the chicken and the egg, right? Then the chicken and the egg. What you're saying is that these weird ideas come first, and then it gets encoded into a religion, and that sort of cements it.
Right.
Yes, and the important point being that the things that the religion cements are a product of the historical context, basically.
Sure.
The environment at the time.
I agree.
But the religion doesn't record the context. It only records the results of the context. And as the context has changed over time, the particulars of the society that the religion has prescribed are no longer valid.
Yeah, I think, we, to be, not to be critical, but we could have started with that. I would have agreed to it without even the point by point. I think that's exactly what religion is, and that's why you see so many different religions in different societies, because they're all coming up with something that reflects the history of that culture. So I think we're in agreement.
Yeah, no, that's fine, because I honestly expected you to.
Yeah, and I think you're right about it. Just sort of hits the conclusions. It's like a conclusion point, and so you don't get this history, and so then people, 2,000 years later, are using this book, and they don't even know why. What is this thing, and why was it written?
I think that's an important thing in fighting religion too, is to recognize that it's not necessarily completely a product of evil, that it's just outdated, basically.
Yeah, yeah, and evolves. All right, well, we're gonna have to let you go.
Can I get my points in regarding the previous topics real quick?
Make it quick.
Very quick. So both with the abortion issue and with the general morality and murder thing, I think what it boils down to is conflicting rights. So with abortion, you have on one hand the mother's right to control her own body as she pleases, and you have the baby's right to life. And where those two rights come into conflict, it's the mother's right that takes precedence.
Yeah, I agree.
And similarly, in the murder case, if you have a burglar who's broken into your home and is coming at you with a knife or whatever,
right,
the burglar still has a right to life and safety, and you have a right to life and safety and possessions.
Right.
And because those rights have come into conflict, your rights take precedence.
I think that's a really eloquent way to express it.
Yep.
Cool.
I agree.
Okay. Thanks.
All right. Thank you.
Rest of the show.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. We have gotten some interesting later callers, but I'm going to see if we can quickly get through some of the people that have been holding since the beginning of the show, because I don't want to cut them out entirely. So let's go ahead and hit Dylan from Illinois. Hi, Dylan. You're on with Tracie and Jen. Dylan, are you there? Okay, going once. Control room, are we having any issues with Dylan?
Hello?
Hi, is this Dylan?
Yeah, sorry. Since I was on hold, I got to work, so
I understand. You've been waiting for a long time. So what's on your mind today, Dylan?
Hey, well, I found your guys' show a little while ago and been listening to a couple episodes, nothing too much, but I consider myself an atheist, maybe agnostic. I don't really know, to be honest, but my mom, goes to church every Sunday, that kind of thing. And, and I'll be honest too, I go with her for Christmas and Easter and that kind of thing, and it makes her happy, right? But I do kind of want to like come clean with her and tell her, about my belief system, right?
Sure.
Okay.
I mean, I understand what you're
So,
saying. Why? So you want to come clean with her, and what's the reason?
Well, just to not put up the farce, right? Like I said, I go to church there and I don't mind that at all,
Okay.
But but like I said, I appreciate the church in a way, to be honest with you, because it has done some really nice things for my family. My dad's sick; he's disabled. Like they came out and like built a ramp for him so that he could, get up out the house. You know what I mean? So,
Okay.
Hey, the ACA does that too.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you're in a situation where the religion is kind of, your family is using it as a positive tool. It's helping
Sure.
your family out. You're participating.
Sure.
About how old are you?
I am going to be 29 this year.
Okay, so you're probably, are you?
And I do still live with my parents.
You do,
but,
okay.
Partly because my dad is disabled.
Got it.
And
You don't have to justify. It's okay. I feel bad, like I didn't mean to. But okay, so you are at home and you're going to church and you're attending with your mother and you don't really believe it. And so what do you think will be the result of coming out to your mom?
I mean, I think she would accept me by all means. I don't think she would, she's not like Bible thumping door to door. You know what I mean? Like
when does it come up? Like when does the religion aspect even come? Like I mean, I know you're going to church and stuff, but does she talk to you about God? Do you feel like you're having conversations where you have to lie? I mean, what is it that is happening that's making you feel like?
I guess not, but like at the same time, like it's just like, it's coming to that point now in my life. Like I said, I am 29. I am getting a little bit older. And, just like, I want to be more upfront with her, you know what I mean? At the same time, like, more, I want her to know more about me.
But dude, I guess what I'm thinking is if these conversations aren't coming up organically, right? Like, so she's not asking you about your views on God. She's not like coming to you and talking to you about her views on God. I mean, it's like it's a non-issue. And I don't know what your relationship is with your parents, but I mean, it seems like if it was something that you felt comfortable with doing, you would just have done it. But calling us makes me wonder, you know what I mean?
Well, I guess part of the reason why I called was, to see if you guys had similar situations with your family and how that played out.
I just dealt with it as it came up or didn't come up. It's like if it comes up, then it comes up, and I'm not going to lie to them. But I don't feel a need to. I've heard. I think some people, might have been Matt, that said something like, the bigger a production you make out of outing yourself, the bigger a production it's going to become. So sometimes it's just about, if it comes up, it comes up. If it doesn't, it doesn't. There's a lot of things, for example, that I have not ever shared with Jen. I don't feel like I'm lying to her or that I'm presenting some facade that, Jen needs to know everything about me. And I'm the same with my family. I'm not sure that they need to know everything that happens in my life. So it's kind of a balancing act. I mean, if you...
But they obviously know they obviously know now that you're atheist, though, right? I mean, like, you know what I mean? Like... And
well, I mean, my family knows, but it's not because of me being on the show. That just sort of came up in the context of my father was very ill, and it sort of came out as a result of kind of that.
Right.
And he was actually preparing to go to the seminary and become a minister. Before he became ill. And so I'd had a few conversations that kind of let him know that I didn't share his beliefs, but it never actually, like really came out until I think after he was already sick. But even then, I mean, I guess my question is, if you just told your mother that you didn't want to go to church with her anymore, would that cause a problem?
But are you saying that you don't want to go to church anymore?
Yeah.
I mean, you're kind of saying you like the people.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't mind going. Like, I don't. Like, it's okay. You know what I mean?
Okay.
I don't.
Yeah. I think
But
for,
I mean-
for us, most people who call the show and say, how do I out myself, are basically sitting in a situation where they feel like their parents are pressuring them with conversations
Right.
about God, or they're being forced to go to church and they don't want to go to church anymore. But you're kind of saying, no, my parents never really bother me about my religious beliefs or what I think, and I'm totally cool going to church, and the people are actually really nice, and they come around. It's almost like it's a non-problem. So, I mean, it's up to you how you do this, but this is one of the, and I don't mean this in a critical way, it's kind of in a humorous way. This is one of the weirdest how do I come out calls we've ever gotten. Like somebody who's just like, everything is cool, but I just want to come out. And don't get me wrong, I'm totally down with everyone who is an atheist. If they can be out, should be out. So, I mean, you could kind of go at it from that angle, like, just join the local atheist group and then tell your mom you had a good time.
Yeah, invite her to the post-show dinner or something. I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah, okay.
I don't really have much advice other than just as long as you're.
I guess you're probably right. I maybe like overthought it a little bit.
Yeah, and you can be an out atheist without.
I think it would hurt. I think it would hurt her though. You know what I mean? Like it wouldn't. Like it wouldn't make her feel good.
Oh, see, and I just don't know.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know if it's worth it if she's still going to love you and you're still going to want to go to church and you still like those people and they're helping you and your family. And I don't know. I would think, if I were you, I would think long and hard about like my reasons for wanting to come out and what the goals are from that. And I mean, that is strictly a personal decision.
Sure. Yeah, like I said, I have been struggling with it because, like I said, I did want to come out more or less for the honesty thing. I've kind of been turning over a new leaf, drinking and drugs and alcohol and that kind of thing. And,
so you've gotten into all kinds of stuff now as an atheist.
No. Well, that was my past, right? That was my past, and
cleaned up and
now,
become an atheist.
And and now I've cleaned up and I've kind of come out and been honest with her about a lot of the stuff that I did in the past, right?
Okay.
But then now this is like one of the last things that I haven't, really.
All right.
Like, me as a man, this is the decision that I came to, you know what I mean? And I wanted to, but then at the same time, I don't want to hurt her. I don't know, should I do it?
Maybe just wait and see if an opening. See if you get an opening.
Yeah, I would just wait until the subject comes up and, you never know.
Hey, that toast doesn't look like Jesus. Can we talk, Mom?
Yeah.
Maybe not like that kind of opening. But all right, well, I mean, good luck with it, and I hope that people aren't hurt by it, and I hope that whatever you do, you're happy with that decision. I'm sorry that I don't have better advice.
No, it's okay. I mean, like you said, it is kind of more of a personal thing, I guess. So I kind of got to figure it out here. But
right.
I appreciate you guys listening for me here.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thanks.
All right, thanks.
Thanks, guys.
We're coming up on the 6 o'clock, and I know that you have somewhere you need to be later, so I wanted to just see if you are available for after show or not.
Let's go ahead and keep going here.
Okay, we'll keep going, but you need to kick me under the table if you've got to cut out. And I do want to just say again, we are having dinner at the Free Thought Library, pizza party. Come and join us if you want to.
I would say that if we can advise the remaining callers, just be concise.
That's what I said. Yeah, I hit the control room up a little while ago and said, no new ones, but let's try and clear the queue.
Yeah,
so let's go ahead with this.
Let's do this.
We'll hit Lucas. You are the final caller who has been waiting since the beginning of the show. So what's on your mind today?
Hi. So I was wondering, what arguments will you use if for whatever reason you abandoned all morals and just decided to be an apologist for Christianity?
Well, I was a very proselytizing, annoying Christian in my former life, and I basically was so impressed with Josh McDowell, who argued from, evidences from the Bible and validity of the Bible, and of course it was all just a mass of, missing information that he knew he shouldn't provide if he wanted his arguments to stand, but I didn't know that at the time. Learned it later, but for me, when I was a Christian, what I was generally arguing was that the Bible was the true and accurate word of God and completely, trustworthy.
I guess I'd like to understand the motivation for this question.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. I guess would be to try to validate Christian belief.
Why?
In people who want to. What?
Why?
Well, it's something, like I said, I know that you wouldn't actually do it. It's just like if you, for, I don't know, money or whatever people.
Well, I guess here's my question though. It's like if you're asking me, what argument would I use if I were a Christian apologist? I mean, are you saying? Oh, okay. Wait a minute. I think I understand what he's saying. He's saying that if we decided that we didn't believe in God, but that we were going to start selling literature, I'm a Christian apologist.
Oh, okay. I didn't get that.
What would we express?
Using the term Christian apologist.
It would be a lot tougher these days for me.
Yeah. I still, it's a bizarre question.
And it's like kind of horrific, but I think God of the Gaps sells well. I mean, if I had to sell an apologetic, and there's an icky feeling with even talking about this, but it's like if I had to sell something to people and think what would dupe them. Number one, I would go for a cult of personality, right? So I would want to sell myself really hard to get them to accept anything I say or do. And then I would go after God of the Gaps like really hard because people fall for that in a hard way.
They do, and there's actually a book out called Merchants of Doubt that talks about how people, it's the same kind of God of the Gaps argument, but it's applied to other things like climate change and, vaccines and all kinds of stuff.
But we're going to be watching. If I see an apologist starting to write books named Lucas out of California, I'm going to be all over that. So I'm going to be like, wait, he's a fraud. Don't be buying this stuff.
Quote unquote former atheist.
Oh, that'd be the pitch, right?
That's actually one of the pitches for Josh McDowell.
All of them. I think they're all, well, I mean, to be fair, they probably all were former atheists. So not necessarily skeptics. All right, well, I mean, I don't know if that's helpful, but that's my 2 cents.
That's great, yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you.
So,
all right,
thanks.
Thank
you very much.
Okay, bye-bye. All right, so now we're getting there. Let's hit real quickly. I feel like this is an important call, so let's go to Amanda in Wyoming. Hi, Amanda. You're on with Tracie and Jen.
Hi. How are you guys today?
Good. How are you?
Pretty good. Let me give you, I guess, some background on me. I was raised going to Christian schools. I went to Catholic, Pentecostal, and Lutheran school.
Oh, wow.
It's a mix.
Yeah, a real big mix. But I was raised in a Baptist family, surprisingly enough.
So you're going to hell in like 4 different religions already here.
Yeah.
You're screwed no matter what you do.
As a kid, I had that genuine fear of like everything I do, I'm going to go to hell. Like, and even like as a teenager, I was like, I'm just destined to hell. Like, heaven's not an option for me. And unfortunately, that like left me very confused on what I actually feel, because like there's a lot of things that growing up I was like, well, how can you guys look at this book and be like, this book is the truth, but I can hold up a Stephen King book and be like, the Stephen King book is the truth. And everyone always goes, oh no, this is God's book, that's why. And then I would get in trouble for
because
questioning.
God, that's why. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like because of Jesus.
Okay, so what's going on now?
Now I'm still trying to find what I really believe, if I really don't believe in God, or if I do believe in God. And what I have been doing is I've been kind of looking at religion as a mythos, like as if they're myths that people are...
Kind of like everybody else's religion.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But I've been like talking to Mormons and trying to get like what they believe. And my husband's been telling me that what I've been doing is really wrong because I'm getting their hopes up that they're going to convert me or that...
Oh, no. Don't worry about them. They'll be fine.
Yeah.
So I was wondering if what I'm doing about like being curious and looking into these religions and...
Oh, I think that if you told a Mormon, if a Mormon came to your door and you said, look, I don't think I believe this stuff, but I'm willing to talk to you, I think they'd say, okay, well, let's make an appointment. I think they'd be happy to talk to you regardless. I don't think that they care if you're like genuinely interested or just curious. I think an opportunity to talk to you is something they would not pass up as long as you were like willing to listen to their story. I don't think you're doing anything wrong. I mean, you're not like lying to them or something, right? I mean, you're just basically saying, hey, come on in and chat.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that really does make me feel a little bit better because I have a lot of religious friends and I ask them what they felt. They're like, oh, you're being a liar.
No,
you're not. I mean,
I'm not sure exactly under what pretenses you're bringing. You're not like keeping them in the basement or something, are you? I mean, it's like, right? I mean, you're telling them that you're willing to talk to them about what they believe and you're willing to listen to them. Is that right?
Right. Yeah. Like.
Okay.
And so, did you seek them out, or did they knock on your door?
I'm sorry. What?
Did you seek them out, or did they knock on your door?
They knocked on the door.
Oh, hey, then you're totally cool.
But to be honest, I'm not sure it matters. I mean, I think if I go to a religious friend and I say, look, I'm just curious. I just want to hear about what you believe. I really don't think they would be like, well, you're an atheist, so I don't want to tell you. I think that they would be happy to share their testimonies.
Yeah, I mean, even if you had sought them out and you said, hey, look, I don't know what I believe, but I'm curious about your beliefs, that's totally fine. But if they knock on your door, that's a totally different level of them consenting to an interaction with you.
What are they?
You are not doing anything wrong.
What do your friends? I mean, you're not telling the Mormons like, hey, yeah, I'm really, your religion's really impressive, and I'm thinking of converting next week. I mean, you're not pitching a line like that, right?
No, not at all. Like,
yeah. Okay. Cool.
Like one of the things that I did was because I don't know if you guys have Latter-day Saints there in Texas, but they tend to hand out Bibles. And,
okay. Yeah.
Like, I read like the first few chapters in it, like just to see what they believed, and I like highlighted some like things that I thought were very contradicting.
Yeah.
And the next time they popped up, like I was like, do you mind? Like I have some things that I would like to ask you about.
Cool.
Like that, like I just have questions about. And they like sat down and they just talked to me. But my husband overheard it, and he's like, don't you think that's kind of mean to point out the flaws?
Well, no.
No, I mean, this is the thing. They are selling their worldview, right? They're selling their belief system. And that's up to them if they want to do that. But you're sitting there basically saying, I'm willing to hear your pitch, right? I mean, that's what you're saying. I'm willing to hear your pitch. And they're pitching, and you're saying, okay, well, I got a question here on this one, right? Like, this doesn't make sense to me. Can you help me? Can you clarify this point? And I don't think, there's nothing wrong with that. If I had somebody come to my house that wanted to sell me aluminum siding and I said, I'm not really interested, but I'll listen to your pitch, I can almost guarantee you they'd come in and make their pitch. And if I had questions about it, they'd be happy to answer. And if at the end of the day, if they don't make a sale, that's not my fault. And it's certainly nothing for them to feel bad about. I mean, they had an opportunity. Maybe at the end of the conversation, I'm going to be signing up for aluminum siding. I don't know, and they don't know. All we're doing is having a conversation, and that's the best that you can guarantee them is that you're willing to listen to it. And of course, they need to explain it if you have questions.
Thank you. That really does mean a lot.
Well, that's just reasonable. Yeah. I mean, you should ask the Mormons. Are you still seeing them?
I'm sorry.
Are you still meeting with the Mormons?
Yeah. Like,
okay. When they come over, why don't you ask them that? Why don't you say, look, I talked to some people and I said that I was having conversations with you, but that I'm not really sure if what I believe right now. And they said that I was being dishonest and that it was mean to talk to you. And then when I told them I had questions about the stuff you gave me, they said that it was like not okay to ask you questions about it. Is that how you feel? And I'm pretty sure the Mormons are going to tell you that you're fine. But I would ask the Mormons. And the next time somebody comes to you and makes a critical comment about you having these conversations, you just say, I talked to the Mormons, and they said you're wrong.
Yeah.
Right? You don't speak for them. Because I guarantee you these Mormons will be happy to talk to you as long as you're sitting there listening to the pitch.
Yeah, like, because they're humans too, and everyone deserves the right to be heard.
Yes, they are. Yes. Mormons are human beings, just like the fetus. Yeah.
And
okay.
Then, I did want to add in about like the things that you guys were talking about the abortions earlier. It's kind of funny that it was all like men who've never even really known anyone who's had an abortion or like been in those situations.
Well, we need to be fair because there are women who are anti-choice. So
that
it happens.
True.
I'm not gonna, but yeah, I mean, definitely there's certainly sufficient numbers of men as well.
I was like, oh, that's sad that they think that, and like, just some people, it's like, just listen, like. That people have human rights. And
violating women's bodies is not really taken that seriously, I think, overall.
Yeah,
right. And
you don't realize that. Like, I've had a friend who she opted for that option because if she would have had the kid, it would have had a miserable life. And that was her decision. And no one has that right to tell her no, like, sorry, that's just off subject.
Right, no, but I mean, because the thing is, when people like, somebody with a uterus isn't considered a human being in your society, and when violating their body is like a joke sometimes and funny sometimes, and joking about violating their body is really funny, and when you can brag about it and still be elected to high office, I mean, this speaks volumes about whether or not women are considered human beings in this society fully.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't do that to another human being. And the fact that there are so many people who think it's nothing, violating women is like funny, or, it's nothing, you're just getting too sensitive about that slap on the butt, or, and it's like, well, thanks for invalidating my humanity, right? I mean,
yeah.
I'm not going around touching other people in intimate ways without permission. I don't do that to people. I consider I respect their autonomy. I respect their agency. I respect their body as themselves.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that that original caller on the screener notes here, it said he wanted to make like an analogy between slavery and abortion, and one of the points that I wanted to make on that was that. It's not that forced pregnancy is just like slavery. It's that forced pregnancy was a component of slavery. It was an essential component of slavery as practiced in this country, especially after the transatlantic slave trade became illegal. Because the only way to get new slaves was to breed them. And so the slave masters basically
treated it like animal husbandry. I mean,
exactly.
It was disturbing. I mean,
they always controlled the fertility of their slaves. Anyway, it became even more important to control a female slave's fertility.
When you're dealing with somebody that you can say is not a human being, there's almost nothing you can't justify doing to them.
Right.
So it's a dangerous precedent. To me, I was talking to somebody about this recently. To me, when you dehumanize a person, that is, I'm kind of, I try to be careful because there might be situations I'm not thinking of or that I have not thought of. But in general, when I think about atrocities and tragedy that is like human-made, it almost always begins with, let's dehumanize this person or this group. And that's when you start to justify things, when you start saying, hey, it's not a person, it's not a human being, so I can do this to them. And I think that's
and then it's
dangerous.
Then it's I'm not doing this to you, you're doing it to yourself because you did this other thing.
And this is why I take that seriously, because to me that is the first step in an atrocity, is deciding that you don't have to respect somebody else, this other member of your society, as a human.
Yeah, and I totally get that. Like, I couldn't picture taking somebody's rights away from them, like pretending that like my niece wasn't actually human or something like that is just so bizarre to me as another living being, and like that's one thing that my husband gets kind of scared about when I get curious about other religions and things, is because like he thinks Mormon is like a cult, and he thinks that like all these other religions that I've looked into in the past are gonna like brainwash me and turn me into like some weird.
What's his religion?
He doesn't really have a religion. He was kind of raised Methodist.
Okay.
He like only went to church like once a year type of thing. But he has like this weird religion shouldn't be talked about and messed with view.
Oh, some people are just raised that way.
Yeah.
I mean, it's probably just an upbringing thing that, you don't talk about this, or don't. But I mean, these are proselytizing groups, right? The Mormons are out there. They're basically saying our upbringing is you do go and talk about this to everybody that will listen. Yeah. So I understand that he's, he probably has some familial history with not being comfortable with that as a topic, and that's kind of unfortunate because it sounds like you're a person who probably has a lot of fun talking about it. But people have different comfort levels.
Yeah, and I I have the hardest time of trying to tell him, like, he doesn't have to talk about it with me if he doesn't want to, but I feel that knowledge is power, and to have, like, the knowledge of, like, oh, this person believes this thing, and I respect that, and I understand that isn't a bad thing. You know what I mean?
That is what an open mind is all about.
Yeah.
You don't have to believe it yourself, but it's good to understand what other people actually believe.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. All right. Well, I don't know if this has been helpful to you, but
It actually really has been. I really do appreciate feeling like I have someone on my side, you know?
All right. Yeah, tell them we said so.
Right.
Because
Right.
the atheist experience, that's why.
Yeah.
No, don't say that.
Yeah, don't do that.
All right. Well, thank you,
All right.
Amanda.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
All right. Thank you guys very much.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right.
All right, so now we've got a couple. Do you have any votes?
No, let's just.
We're down to
pick
some
one.
final ones. So we'll
All
pick
right.
one. Let's pick number 2. Let's do it.
All right.
Hey, Isaac, you're on with Tracie and Jen.
Hey, what's up, Tracie?
Hey, we're just doing the show. What are you up to?
Well, I've got some notes here that I've been taking over the last couple of days about Jesus and his existence in history.
Okay.
Okay.
So I would just like to ask you, and I would ask you, do you guys believe that Jesus existed?
I personally have no opinion on it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. What's your name to the left of Tracie? Sorry.
Jen, it's okay.
Jen, sorry. Do you believe that Jesus existed?
I don't.
You do not. Okay. So why?
I think that it's possible that there was one or more itinerant rabbis somewhere in the ancient Near East around the time of Jesus' alleged existence, but I don't think that you could point to any single individual and say, that guy, that was Jesus.
Okay, so you don't believe in that the Gospels were actually eyewitnesses?
No, and I think that's pretty well established by the timeline of
Yeah,
which
the
they were
Gospels are
published.
anonymous, so
Yeah.
absolutely we can't say that those were eyewitness Gospels. And in fact, Luke basically says it's not eyewitness testimony. Luke says that he interviewed people.
Yeah.
Yeah, he interviewed the people that handed it down.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's
so
not
you
an
believe
eyewitness.
that
Yeah,
the
that's
time-
not, that's hearsay.
Okay. So you believe that the time you believe that the timeline is off, like these documents are written too late to be accepted as eyewitnesses.
I think that's been pretty well established.
Yeah, and I have no opinion on
Okay,
it. I mean, to
so,
me, I guess it doesn't matter, right? It's
Yeah.
like, what is the relevance here? Let's say that there was a rabbi, this guy Jesus, he went out and talked to people and did some stuff, and somebody, they told some stories, and it got, it was a little bit mythologized, and they ended up in these books with all miracles and weirdness, and then in the end it comes 2,000 years later to us in all kinds of weird revised forms, and today we have this weird religion that has come up around it where they're taking all this strangeness seriously, and so what is the point?
What is the point of this?
Yeah.
What is the point of Christianity?
No, what is the point of this call?
Cult?
The call.
Cult.
What are we talking? No, the call. The call.
At the very beginning. Let's go back. Oh, what's the point of the call?
Yes.
I guess I kind of got off topic here. What I was trying to do is create a timeline of why I think the Gospels are eyewitnesses. Can I get into
What
that?
difference would it make? I mean,
It
first
would
of all,
mean that these-
wait.
Hey, hold up. Listen, it would mean that these people were eyewitnesses that saw Jesus.
They don't claim to be eyewitnesses.
Yeah.
The writers don't claim to be eyewitnesses. So even if you said, hey, these things were written in AD 30, or let's say AD 40, my question is, so what?
10 years after Jesus' death. Okay.
Yeah, so what?
So what?
Yeah.
Does that not mean Jesus was true then?
No.
What do you mean Jesus was true?
Okay.
And
What does that mean?
let me tell you.
If we make this line that Jesus is not a legend, okay, if we make it where these Gospels are true, then why would the people...
Who says the Gospels are true? Wait a minute. Who said the Gospels are true just because they're written 10 years after somebody lived and died? Who says that they're true? If I can write a...
Let me get my point. If Jesus died on the cross, all right, if we know that Jesus died, okay, if we know Jesus' death was a historical fact, and then we have people that have saw him after his death and they're writing about it, and they're dying terrible deaths for it, then why would they die those terrible deaths?
Nobody died a terrible death for Jesus dying on the cross. I did a whole thing on martyrs.
No Christian died terrible death. So
Right.
Romans didn't throw Christians into big.
No, wait a minute. You're confusing some things here, all right? The fact that Christians were persecuted is not the same as somebody being tortured or killed because they refused to recant a resurrection story. That Christian does not exist.
Those Christians don't exist. So where are the
Right.
Christians later?
Can you tell me? Can you tell me a martyr?
In 110 AD, when Nero blamed the burning of Rome on the Christians, and
Right.
they were persecuted.
They were persecuted.
Only 60 years after supposedly Jesus' death. 60 years later. So where did those people get this? If you're talking about a myth over time that is slowly developed into this, let's get into.
Lots of religions are persecuted.
Yeah.
Lots of religions are persecuted, but if I start killing Christians, that doesn't mean that I'm killing them because they refuse to recant the resurrection. It means I'm persecuting Christians. It means you'd have to demonstrate that they could have saved their lives by saying Jesus was not resurrected. And I'm saying, do you have that example? Please give me that example, because I don't know of that example. The only martyr that's in the Bible, right, you've got a martyr in the Bible that is Stephen, and he's stoned for what he was saying, but there was never an option for him to say, okay, I recant, and then they weren't going to kill him. So this was not a guy who refused to recant. This was a guy that said some stuff, pissed people off, and they killed him. That's a whole different story.
So you want an example of what this is? Okay, so let's take Paul's letter in 1 Corinthians.
Paul never met Jesus.
Yeah, Paul never claimed
Paul never met Jesus.
He didn't. He met the people who saw Jesus, and they told him about it.
Again, that's hearsay. That's not an eyewitness account.
Paul was telling them about Jesus. Paul was telling them about Jesus, and he never met him.
Yeah.
Why do you not believe that the Gospels were eyewitness accounts?
Because they don't claim to be.
We've read them.
Can you tell me where any of those Gospels say that they're an eyewitness account? Which one of them says it? What verse?
Says it at the end of John.
The end of John. What do we got? What's the verse?
Get over to it here. So you're wanting me to find the verse that says that he is an eyewitness. That's what you're wanting me to find.
The things that I'm writing are things I personally saw, not just things that other people said.
All right. Okay, John 21:24. This is the disciple who testifies about these things and has written these things, and we know that his testimony is true. There are many other things that Jesus did. If every one of them were written down, I suppose the whole world would not have room for the books that were written. Now, why would he say all these things that Jesus did if he hadn't seen them?
Because he's talking to people who are claiming things.
Okay.
I can tell you, I can go out and interview 100 people about an incident that occurred and say everything I'm telling you is absolutely true. I'm reporting it accurately. It doesn't mean I saw it.
All right, so do you believe that the guy who wrote Luke, okay?
Yeah.
Do you believe that Luke was the person that wrote it?
I don't know who wrote it. The Gospels are anonymous, right? I mean, you're talking about church tradition.
No, Luke's not.
Yes,
Luke's
he is.
Not an anonymous gospel.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Okay, does it matter who wrote them?
No.
Then what? Okay, then we have Acts where a guy is saying.
Acts is just about is a history of the church.
Okay, Acts is the history of the church. So give me this reason. If Acts was about the history of the church, and these documents are written late, right? You're saying that these documents are did you say that these documents
I didn't say when they were written. I'm saying I don't give a crap when they were written.
Why?
Because it doesn't matter.
Why does that not matter? If some guy saw what happened...
Because if I write to you and tell you that somebody's walking on water and coming back from the dead and turning water into wine, does it really matter when I wrote it? Isn't that just kind of whack?
No, it does matter, because if it's not an eyewitness testimony,
You know what? It is. I did it yesterday. Yesterday, I went into the kitchen and I needed some wine and there wasn't any wine, and I had this pitcher of water and I just touched it and it turned into wine, and I did that all by myself, and I saw it and did it. Not only am I an eyewitness to it, but I actually did it. Do you believe me?
I don't know. I'll look at the eyewitness.
Oh, come on.
I'm
Well, yeah,
first-hand
is that more to do
account.
with the gospel for
I
just the
saw it.
eyewitnesses?
Yeah, Jen was with me
I
and
saw
she
it.
saw it.
I'm the eyewitness.
Is it true?
You're the eyewitness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, you're the eyewitness. Give me the story again.
The story is that I had a pitcher
had
of
no
water.
wine.
Yeah, we
I
needed
want to
some
hear the
wine.
eyewitness.
Oh, go for it.
Yeah, no, we had no wine. We only had this pitcher of water, and she went in and got the pitcher of water and put her hands on it and turned into wine.
Okay, so are you saying that you have powers from God or what?
I don't know. I just know that I can convert water to wine. It's the wildest
I just
thing.
know that I'm inviting her to every one of my parties from now on.
There you go. It was really good wine, too.
Yeah.
The best
Man,
wine.
okay. Well, if you've got powers from God, I guess you got
I didn't
powers.
say I had powers from God.
Okay, well then how do you turn water into wine?
You got me. It was the weirdest thing.
Okay, wow, weirdest thing. Maybe it was a miracle. All right.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, if a miracle just means something that we say happened that can't happen, then yeah, it's a miracle.
All right. So you said earlier, you said that it doesn't matter when it was written.
Right.
Okay. Well then, what evidence are you looking for to see that the Gospels are eyewitness accounts?
Why would I believe anything in a book full of whack stories is true? Even
What's
if a
whack
person,
about the Gospels?
if
What is
somebody
whack about the Gospels?
Okay, it defies everything we know about reality, right? We've got people coming back from the dead days later. We have people walking on water, which we know doesn't actually work. We have people converting chemically water into wine, which we know doesn't happen. There are there's talking donkeys and talking serpents and fruit that gives you knowledge of good and evil. I mean, what part of it isn't whack, right? Other than the begats, what part of this story makes any sense at all? The whole thing is bizarre.
All right, well then that means you don't believe in a God. So
Well, thank you. I guess that's why this is the atheist experience.
This guy's a genius.
Wow. Okay, well, look, I'm going to have to ask you to call back another time if you want to continue the conversation. We've got one more call to go, and I would like to go ahead and
All
take
right, one
that.
last thing.
Sure, go for it.
Don't.
Hello? All right, we have one more call here that is screened, and that is Jessi in New York. Thank you for holding, and you are our final call for the show today. And you're on with
Hi,
Jen and
guys.
Tracie. Hey.
Hey.
I'm so excited. I called specifically to talk to you ladies because you are my heroes.
Oh, yeah, no. Please don't say that. Yeah,
I am a huge fan of Godless Bitches. I've been listening for a long time. I just wanted to thank you before I get to talking about my topic because I think what you do is the most feminist, the most humane, the most human thing that can possibly be done.
That's a big thing.
Thank you.
Women.
That's a really big
I mean
thing.
it, though.
Okay.
You know? Like, lest I put too much pressure upon you for the salvation of sanity in this world.
I take no responsibility for outside opinions on what I do.
Right. Well, I actually called to talk to you guys about atheism and feminism because I think that women have a really significant ability to eliminate religion from this world. And I think that true feminism is intersectional and atheistic, and I wanted to pick your guys' brains about it because you guys have the most cogent explanations. I love them.
I don't know what you mean by feminism being inherently atheistic.
Oh, that feminism itself, the concept of the equality of the genders, basically, doesn't need to necessarily rely on dogma or God belief. And it
it doesn't require it. It doesn't require it. I just want to make sure, because I wouldn't say that a person who has theistic views necessarily couldn't be feminist.
Although
I suppose I'm talking about those who then adhere to Abrahamic religion specifically, or just a religion in general that disenfranchises women.
I think the authoritarian, the authoritarian Western religion would be very difficult to square with feminism. I'll give you that.
Yeah. Well, and I would say that that was one of the early criticisms of the early second wave feminists. That they were too atheistic, because there were an awful lot of atheist feminists in
Makes it a little easier when you get out of it, but yeah.
It's true, yeah. Well, I mean, I think how much of the death of second wave feminism and that criticism actually coincides with the satanic panic in the 80s and the rise of evangelicalism in politics?
The evangelicals, their rise was actually, they played a long game.
I know.
And, certainly attacking feminism was a central part of that. But I don't know that second wave feminism, I don't know that you could trace their demise to that or specifically to the satanic panic stuff. I think.
Oh, I just mean that having been a consideration in it because there was a sudden resurgence of religious zealotry and a larger influence of religion in the mainstream.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, religion relies, at least the, Western and Abrahamic religions, they rely on the subjugation of the woman in order to maintain the system, which is why I think women have such a huge responsibility and at the same time such a huge power to eliminate religion, because in a way we're obliged to play the long game. But if we don't teach our children to be religious, then the next generation doesn't have to be religious.
Right.
I guess, I don't know. I mean, you'd kind of have to, well, first of all, you'd have to get all parents on board with this, even if they weren't atheists, which would be hard because just because somebody is a woman, you could just as easily, I think what they labeled here is that the power women have to eliminate religion. And I guess my question would be, wouldn't it be the power of any people to eliminate religion? Like it doesn't, why would that fall to women or even feminism?
I think partially. Oh, I'm sorry, Jen. Go ahead, darling.
No, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think if I understand you correctly, atheism should have a natural appeal to women who want to break free of sort of the patriarchal constraints that Abrahamic religions in particular impose on women. And in that sense, women are kind of a natural constituency for atheism and feminism. Mm-hmm. And I agree with that, but beyond that, it's a heavy lift from there.
Okay, well, I think I'm seeing it from a certain perspective wherein I see that there's a certain ethic of care that's expected of women in, I'll speak for American society because I'm from New York, and especially in American society, that this ethic of care, even though it's sort of balancing out now as we progress, that women are the ones who generally have the influence over their children from the cradle. And it's often these women who have stayed within their religion, whether they felt doubts about it or not, and a lot don't. And they are the ones who are the first teachers in everything, including religion.
But women are also more likely to be religious.
Yeah.
Yes, and I think that's because of where we are placed in society due to the patriarchy.
Which it may be, but I don't know. I really don't know that that's causal. I can understand why somebody would think it, but I don't know that that's a demonstrated fact.
Yeah, and I think if you look at the studies that talk about like societal health and the fact that the least religious societies are also the societies that have more social supports. Mm-hmm. So again, it comes down to a resource thing. Constrained resources means people are more, religious versus, abundant resources. People don't have to rely on religion for basic things.
Right.
And I think if we got to a point where we actually did provide more support to families in general, but women and children in particular, I think we probably would see a decline in religion.
Yeah, I think religion fills a gap that it does not, that it ferociously guards.
Yes.
And wants to keep, they want to keep that gap there. They want to make sure that you live in fear of losing your job tomorrow and in fear that,
Absolutely.
Because that's their role, and they are not going to let somebody else step into that role. And so they are really against the idea, when it comes to the authoritarian religions, against that concept of social welfare, because then what happens to them?
Yeah.
Right. Well, because it allows them independence. But you would, I would think that because I just finished, I wrote my thesis on Socratic law and like how it applies to women's health and how like we use it in our country to legislate. If there is a genuine desire by these religions as they so express themselves. Although I do remember, I think it was Tracie that you said you went to a church where they said you don't have to help anybody, it's every man for himself.
Right, yeah. Yeah.
So that's crazy. But if there is such a communal desire and a communal aspect to these churches, why are they not supporting these programs? I mean, I know the answer to this question, but churches should be asking.
Are you talking about social programs? I mean, the liberal Christians do support social programs. It's the authoritarian ones that don't.
Yeah.
Right. So it has, my question about that authoritarian tendency in religion is that people seeking a leader because they don't feel that they're equipped to think about these things for themselves and they don't care what the consequences are, or is there some other consideration here, or is that just individual?
Well, there are certain religious groups that promote this idea that lay people aren't equipped to interpret the scripture and they need a leader's guidance to do this properly.
Yeah, I was raised Catholic, I know.
Yeah, well, and it's not just Catholic. There's actually some Protestant groups that believe the same thing.
Yeah, doesn't surprise me.
That, you know, you actually need someone with the power of discernment or whatever bullshit they're coming up with to interpret the scripture for you.
Right.
So.
That was kind of what I was saying earlier when somebody asked about how would you sell an apologetic, and I said the first thing I would do would be to build a cult of personality, because that's how you control people. You tell them I have the line to God, and I can tell you what He means in this Bible, and once they believe that, you've got them.
Yeah, and that's interesting because
televangelists do.
The conversations I've had with Jehovah's Witnesses, I think I'm blacklisted.
They're wild,
now. But yeah, the ones that I've had conversations with, when I've gotten to the point where I've made them deeply uncomfortable, their retreat line is always, well, I'm going to go talk to my,
the supervisor to God,
pastor or whatever, about this, and I'll get back to you. And of course, they never come back.
Right. Because they know they have no answers, and the hierarchy of the Jehovah's Witness, of the Watchtower, and of the organization itself is such that especially women are not equipped to actually give real answers. They're just answering by rote, which is very scary. And, given the stupendous amount of sexual abuse that they're being sued for right now on, I think 2 or 3 continents.
Yeah.
Don't quote me on that. That's a huge problem. And like I said, an organization that is supposed to be communal minded, whether it practices in an authoritarian or a liberal way, surely the maintenance of such cohesion relies on the maintenance of the health of its congregation and its adherents. And I just don't see that from religion. And I think that it affects women and children the worst.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that most people, outside of authoritarian religion would agree that authoritarian religion is not a positive thing. I mean, authoritarian structures and hierarchies generally are not a good thing, but when you add God's authority to it, you end up with a nightmare. So I think that the whole, I don't think you're going to get much. There's a lot of literature on the harms of authoritarian thinking and growing up in authoritarian homes and in authoritarian belief systems. It's damaging.
Yeah, but my question is why. I mean, it's not really a question. I just wanted to know if you guys thought the same thing, that the inherent subjectivity of the God belief, because it is all just in your head and it's entirely dependent on the experience that you have, and even people from the same church can't necessarily agree on a definition of God. So the inherent subjectivity of that experience is all the more reason why it should not ever be considered in lawmaking or any sort of
one of the many reasons.
Yes, it's one of many reasons not to.
Yeah. But I mean, I would agree with you.
Believers shouldn't feel empowered to use that as an explanation. I'm sorry, Tracie.
It's okay. I was just going to say that I do agree with your idea. I think that there are societies that have demonstrated pretty clearly that if you put a gap in learning for a generation, like if you basically rewrite your history texts, it only takes like a generation or two, and you've got a new history. So I do think that access to knowledge for younger people and having the capacity to write or rewrite the information for the next generation or two can affect society in a huge way. No doubt about it. And if you're basically saying child caregivers have they're well situated. I would think, in my own mind, after what happened here with our school board, I would say that communities and school boards are well situated to do that. And so if you
I agree. I used to be a teacher.
Yeah, and if you've ever seen the movie The Revisionaries, it's frightening. Yeah. At the end of it, I had a friend who said, "Is this legal?"
Yeah.
And I said, "It's completely legal." And the idea of just being able to have that small body of people, like less than a dozen people together, who are weird, like religious to a creationist level, who are controlling the curriculum of the entire state of Texas school system, and then how that expands outward to books that are purchased by smaller states that can't get custom books, that then are buying the books that Texas is producing. And so you end up with this multi-state, thing. And then when religious groups coordinate within the nation, then you end up with this big just flood of disinformation that comes out for a generation or two. And that's all you need. You just need to inflict it on one generation, and now you've got them raising another generation, telling them what they learned.
Right. Well, if you guys don't mind me asking about being moms, do you feel that there is sufficient oversight with your kids' schooling? Because I feel like there's a lot of these private institutions where parents send their kids, I guess, for fear of the big bad public school system, which did me just fine.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you have enough input on their education?
For kids going to private schools?
Just in general, like if you're wherever your kids go, do you feel like you?
Yeah, my kid attends a public school, which is phenomenal. We have had an amazing experience with the public schools. Lots of support from teachers, from principals, everything. And I know some people who either homeschool or send their kids to private schools because they don't want them exposed to what they perceive to be negative elements in the public schools.
Right.
I think most of
I feel that way about private school, religious school.
Well, the thing is, I think most of the stuff that they object to in the public schools are a direct consequence of either overcrowding in the school, where you've crammed way too many kids into a small environment, or it's a consequence of poverty. Because poor school performance, whether people like it or not, is actually a proxy measure of poverty in that school district. And so I think if we could address poverty and school overcrowding, we would eliminate the majority of what people's concerns, legitimate concerns, are about the school system. When it comes to the other stuff, the doctrinal stuff, the dogmatic stuff, there are people that send their kids to private schools or they homeschool them because they don't want them exposed to gay people. They don't want them to have sex education. They don't want them to have, a legitimate science education. They don't want them even exposed to certain elements of American history that are uncomfortable for them. And I want my kid exposed to all of those things.
Absolutely.
And I mean, exposure to gay people is unavoidable. He has two moms, so, But I'll tell you the story that I've told many people, and that is that several years ago we had a fundamentalist homeschooling couple that lived like diagonally across the alley from us. Okay. And we bought our houses at about the same time. The neighborhood was just developing and everything. And so they already had one kid, and over the course of years they had 3 more. And so these little kids were just stair-stepped on up, and they sent them to this private, or it was actually a religious homeschooling co-op, so that their kids would not be exposed to the negative elements of the world. And then my wife and I had our son. And so every day when we took the kid outside to play, there were 4 little kids who were in this religious homeschool. And so we took perverse delight in knowing that they had to explain our family to their kids anyway.
Awesome.
So after all this effort at insulating them from people like us, here we are. We live in your neighborhood.
Yeah.
You're a friendly lesbian couple.
Yeah. I mean, I'm teaching a kid right now that I'm mainstreaming out of special ed into general ed, and he's got 2 moms, and they're 2 of the most coherent, cogent, amazing people that I've ever met.
Yeah.
And their son is super healthy and super well adjusted. And like, I think what they do, they're both like social workers. They're like incredible people. This empowerment that they have to be the mothers that they are comes from a lot of fighting, because they both grew up in houses that were religious and they were really not allowed to be gay.
Yeah,
and
that's rough.
So I really like what you said before about fixing institutional problems, which is obviously what we need to do. And you think that'll lead to a decline in religious adherence?
I do.
I'm understanding correctly?
Yeah, I do.
Awesome, because that's also my point. That's what I was hoping to get from you guys.
Awesome.
I want to ask you if it's okay if I use the notes I took from this conversation on my Atheist podcast?
I'm fine with it. I mean, this is broadcast publicly, so
yeah,
I think it's totally okay.
Cool. Yeah, I'm taking over the New York City Atheist podcast and their TV show as of 2019.
Well,
yeah,
congratulations.
So I want to get some more Atheist ladies.
Good luck with that.
Thank you, and that's
All
why
right.
I want to talk to you, because you are my role model.
All right.
So thank you.
All right, well, thank you. And with that, I'm going to say thank you to our awesome audience, especially the hardcore people who stayed in their chairs and didn't get pizza yet. Yeah. And then to the crew that we held hostage. And I hope that they were able to somehow get to the pizza and sort of maybe rotate for food or something. And poor Jen has somewhere which she needs to be. And I just thanks to everybody for all the hard work and for coming out and making it what it is. And now we're ready for pizza party, I think.
All right.